I'd like to welcome you guys all here today. My name is Joshua Nelson. I'm the Vice President of the Orange County Branch. I'd like to have everybody stand right now, and we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go ahead and be seated. I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the ASCE leadership, and then the rest of the invited speakers will be introduced later. But I'm not sure if Greg Pirates, did he make it? Let's see, Greg here. Okay. And then how about Andy from the section? Andy Mackey? All right. Anybody else from the Orange County branch that serves on a committee or is a board member, go ahead and stand up real quick and just kind of wave to everybody. Penny, we got Carl.
All right.
Gary, incoming. All right. Thank you guys for being here today. I'd like to bring up Bill Lawson. He's our History and Heritage Committee Chair, and he's also going to be running the rest of the program here, so I'd like to introduce Bill.
Thank you, Josh. Before we go too far and I forget, I need to explain the flag.
Yes, you do.
This is a historic flag. We are a historic and heritage organization, and I've owned this flag for 50 years. It flew essentially when John F. Kennedy became president, and it's been at a lot of different events throughout my life, and it's been in a dark corner for a while, but I thought this would be a good place maybe for it to say hello one more time. So anyway, that's why it looks the way it does. It's been a few places. All right. First, I'd like to just explain, why are we here today? The History and Heritage Committee of the Orange County Branch has been active for about 25 years or so. The National History and Heritage Committee was started in 1964 as a nationwide organization to try and point out the importance of civil engineering and our heritage and the historical structures that are out there. Many date back to early 1800s that have been noted as historically significant structures. Here in Orange County, since around the 1st of 1980 or maybe 85, we've dedicated a total of 13 plaques for 11 different facilities, if you will, facilities and structures. I won't name them, but each of them has a plaque that's been formally dedicated by the Orange County Branch over the years. This is our second dedication this year. We had one earlier at the John Wayne Airport. The previous year we had one at the Orange County Water District. These are the kind of places that we've been to. Sometimes our dedications are for very specific items, and today's it's for a system, if you will, the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System. We're not talking about the Water District, and Carl Nelson will explain that later. All right. I think with that, I'm going to start the dedication of the plaque by unveiling it. So it's over here hiding behind our banner, and hopefully the banner will behave. The Orange County Parks Department assisted ASCE. They built the pedestal for this and installed the plaque on it. And they've provided everything else for this event today, including its permanent location here in Peters Canyon Regional Park. So we're very thankful to the Orange County Parks Department. So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Carl Nelson, who I've named as the Orange County historian. He knows just about everything there is to know about Orange County civil engineering history, at least, and he will give a few words on that. And I can't find Carl now. Where'd you go? Okay. All right. The way this will work, Carl will introduce the next speaker, and then the next speaker will introduce the next speaker. And the final speaker will turn it back over to me, and we'll wrap it up at that point.
Thank you, Bill. To explain our historic civil engineering landmark, I want you to go back to 1888. Now, some of you can see the hill behind you, and some of you can see the hill right behind this sycamore tree. But picture 1888. There was no dam. There were no green trees here. September would be pre-winter, and young James Irvine II came to Orange County from San Francisco, having inherited the largest ranch in Orange County, purchased by his father, James Irvine I, in 1876. I won't go into detail about the land acquisition and so on, but the ranch that he came to take over 2 years after his father died, because the trust provided that he couldn't take it over until he was 25 years old. Once he got here, now remember, this is 110,000 acres that begins over at Corona del Mar, Newport Beach, and runs clear across the county in a swath about, I haven't checked this, but let's say 10 miles wide. And it must have seemed like he owned the whole world, but it was operated in the Mexican rancho type of lifestyle, sheep and cattle grazing. And as you know, our weather is so erratic that there were even times when there wouldn't be enough water for the cattle. In those days, in fact, the demise of the rancho era was a consequence, among other things, of the great droughts. The greatest flood in Orange County history came in 1862, and it was followed by an even greater drought period in the later 1860s when the rancho was acquired by Irvine. So, young James Irvine began to convert the property from a dry farming, grazing type of operation to irrigated agriculture. Now, the story of water is quite extensive, and here was a man with his own resources and his own property, with no government involvement, began to do this. And the streams of the area do not provide enough water to irrigate his huge property. Now, I mentioned the hills here. These hills are known on the maps as Loma Ridge. Santiago Peak is some distance in the east from here, and its rainfall is more than double the rainfall on the flatland of Orange County. So to my right is what we now think of as Irvine Valley, where the average annual rainfall is 13 inches, and we have no rain, literally no rain, between May and September. If we have a rain shower during that summertime, it's usually not measurable. To the left of the Loma Ridge, most of the watershed from Santiago Peak runs to the left of the ridge and runs through Orange down to the Santa Ana River and onto the ocean. Since that area gets twice as much rain, it had an opportunity for water conservation, but most of the water comes in 2 or 3 days, and it runs to the ocean. On the Newport Bay watershed of this ranch, the water was so sparse, even in floods, that it barely made it to the bay. There was a big swamp down here, and there's more detailed history over on the bulletin board here about that subject. But James Irvine II took the bull by the horns, so to speak, and decided that he, owning the upper part of Santiago Creek watershed, could divert that springtime flow around the ridge and down to this canyon, so that it would flow by gravity down to what would become the family mansion and headquarters. That was in 1893. Well, what he found out was that the Serrano and Carpenter water companies, private water companies down in Villa Park, had already appropriated the surface flow that they could use for irrigation. They sued, they won, and Irvine stopped what he had done, which was to have a ditch dug from over where Irvine Lake is now, around the contour of the land, right behind you here, and down into this area, and from here, the water, if you had enough, could run clear of the upper Newport Bay. But his objective was to irrigate. Well, he was foiled in that respect, so he began to develop groundwater resources. And it was kind of his coincidence that groundwater pumping was a new technology. And there's a problem. We think of having a water well. You put in you dig a hole, put in an electric pump, and pump it around where you want it to go. Well, it was a little harder job here in the 1890s. There's no electricity. So they began with gas engine driven pumps and began to irrigate the area just east of Tustin. By the 1920s, the ranch was one of the largest orange growers in California. It was large enough that they had the Santa Fe Railroad build a spur track out toward what is now El Toro Marine Base. Now that spur track has long been abolished by development, but they had their own packing plants out there, and so it was a great orange growing empire. But the groundwater in this dry valley over here started to give out, and there isn't enough natural replenishment to keep it going at the rate they were pumping. So Irvine, by this time I might add, he had hired for a full-time ranch engineer, Mr. Roy Browning, licensed civil engineer. And Mr. Browning was first involved in laying out the pipelines for and the pumping stations for groundwater, but in the meanwhile, Irvine went back to Carpenter and Serrano, developed an agreement that the floodwater on Santiago Creek, which was very damaging, could be stored behind a dam. Mr. Browning laid out that dam, which is just over the hill here, now known as Irvine Lake, and it was built in 1931, completed in 1931, and it provided enough water to irrigate not only the lower Carpenter and Serrano properties in Villa Park, but also the bottom of the valley of Irvine Ranch. Now, the engineering aspect of this was that Mr. Browning laid out a series of reservoirs down in the Irvine Ranch Valley, in addition to the dam up here known as Irvine Lake. So there was from the dam a pipeline that followed the old 1893 ditch around just uphill from here, flowed by gravity to this location, and concurrent with the upper dam, this dam, known as Peters Canyon Dam, was completed also in 1931. Now, the remarkable engineering aspect is that the water still had to be delivered way down into the ranch land. If you just let it go from this dam, it would flow down the canyon and you wouldn't be able to pick it up and irrigate the land. So what is known as the Highline Canal was built to take water from this small, known as a regulating or terminal reservoir, down into the valley, approximately 10 miles east to what would become El Toro Marine Base. Now, prior to this water, that area had been known as the largest lima bean field in the world. 31,000 acres of lima beans that could be grown with no irrigation, period. It was a successful operation, but with irrigation, the area from there to Tustin became the orange groves that even today, the Irvine Company, in advertising subdivisions, what do they show? Thousands and thousands of houses? No, they show a great, big, beautiful aerial view of orange groves that James Irvine was able to develop with the water that came through the engineering effort of Mr. Roy Browning. So, to sum up, this irrigation system, entirely developed with private money, was a great industry for the heart of Orange County, and it worked and survived until the 1960s, when the company donated land for the University of California, Irvine. The ranch company created a public agency called Irvine Ranch Water District. So the system I've been describing was not a public agency. At the time that other irrigation projects were being done, even the great national historic civil engineering landmark like Hoover Dam, were all publicly financed. Irvine privately financed this and developed his ranch. So Irvine Ranch Water District was a vehicle by which the ranch area and the new city of Irvine, established in 1971, I believe, needed more than irrigation water, and it was available from the Colorado River. So the Irvine Ranch Water District, the Orange County Municipal Water District, and the Metropolitan Water District provide the supplemental water to allow the city of Irvine to begin to develop. So I want to separate the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System from the Irvine Ranch Water District, which is a public agency, and we won't go into the details on that. But of course, what you see in Irvine today, and Orange right behind us, could not have developed just with the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System. And I won't go into those details except to say, today, 80 years later, Irvine Lake is still the largest reservoir in Orange County, and it is used also for the storage of metropolitan water. That complicates the story too. So looking at Peters Canyon Dam, it's a nice small reservoir used only for the aesthetic value of this regional park. And we're very thankful to the Irvine Company for donating the land as it is, to the Orange County Parks Department, and that the Orange County Parks Department now has this fine recreational facility, and we're fortunate to have the opportunity, because this reservoir is the only publicly accessible remaining part of that Irvine Ranch Irrigation System. So this is a publicly accessible place where we could place the civil engineering historical landmark monument. And that sums up the story of the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System and how it laid the groundwork for later development of the public agency known as Irvine Ranch Water District. Now I'd like to turn the mic over to Mark Denny, the director of our Parks Department, who has made this opportunity available to us. Mark?
All right, good morning. Thank you all for being here and welcome to Peters Canyon Regional Park. First, I'd like to make some brief introductions. And we have some members of the Orange County Historical Commission here with us this morning, so I'd like to recognize them if I could. Don Dobmeyer, I saw you back there. Don, welcome. Lynn Yeager is here. Lynn is right there. Morning, Lynn. Helen Myers is also here. Helen, hi Helen. And Pamela Harrell is right there. And Steve Sarkis from the 1st District right there. Thank you, Steve. I also wanted to make a couple of county introductions as well, so that you can get to know some of the folks from the County of Orange. Michael Breidish is here. He's our Deputy Director of OC Parks. Mike. Scott Thomas is our Design Manager. Scott's right back there. Susan Brodeur is our Senior Civil Engineer, and I figure we're amongst engineers here, Susan, so I've got to introduce you. And very importantly, Griselda Castillo from our Historical Programs group, right back there, and I think responsible for helping put this event together. I'm also very pleased to recognize a couple of special guests. A former OC Parks, we call them OC Parks, they used to call it Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, but our former acquisition manager, Eric Jessen, is here. Eric, and I think Eric had something to do with the county acquiring this particular piece of property and quite a bit of the property that's part of the system today, and Eric's a bit of a family historian of the Irvine family, so thank you, Eric, for being here on this special occasion. We're also pleased to have Ray Matthey, the county surveyor, here with us, and of course Carl Nelson, the former director of Orange County Public Works. So Carl and I had a fun conversation about what that means in today's context. So briefly, Orange County Parks encompasses regional wilderness and historical facilities as well as coastal areas throughout the County of Orange. Features 60,000 acres of parkland, open space, and shoreline. Orange County's award-winning parks and programs are enjoyed by millions of residents and visitors each year in ways as diverse as the parks themselves. We're standing here in Peters Canyon, which was formerly owned by the Irvine family, as Carl mentioned, and was initially leased out to several local farmers. James Peters, for whom the canyon is named for, dry farmed barley and beans in the upper part of the canyon. We're certainly pleased to host today's event on behalf of the American Society for Civil Engineers, and thank you, Carl, for all the work that you folks have put into this event. On March 3, 1992, the Irvine Company dedicated 354 acres of Peters Canyon to the County of Orange to be preserved as open space. This land was turned into the beautiful park that exists here today. I won't get into the details. I think Carl provided a great history, but we are looking at the upper basin. There were 2 basins here. This is the upper, and as Carl mentioned, this is still a facility that collects rainwater in this watershed. It doesn't serve as a domestic source of water, but certainly serves an important aesthetic role here in the park, as well as an important place for the birds and other wildlife that live here. We want to thank the American Society of Civil Engineers who've taken the initiative to thoroughly research 80 years of history and build an extensive report on the significance of the Irvine Irrigation System. The development of this system ultimately transformed Orange County, really, into the most prosperous agricultural enterprises in the state of California. And really, it was Carl's effort, and we really want to thank and appreciate all the work that you put in, Carl, to make this happen. I do want to thank Griselda Castillo and all of her staff for helping make this event happen, as well as Jim Simpkins, Raul Herrera, and all of our operations staff from the East Orange Operations Group, and Jim and Raul are back there, as well as Randy. So thank you guys for all of your work on this. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce and call forward our most special guest here today, the chairman of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, the supervisor representing the 3rd District, in which we are pleased to be today, Supervisor Bill Campbell.
Thank you very much, Mark. I have some prepared notes, but I have a couple of comments too. First of all, Mark, your guys did a great engineering job of this base. I think it's going to last a long time. So I think it's pretty solid. And then Carl, I have a question for you. In 1931, when they did the work on the dam at Irvine Lake and also this dam, how long did it take to process the EIR? I think I know the answer to that one, Carl. Carl, I think you and I are thinking exactly the same way. For those of us who have traveled to see a lot of the engineering feats done in the late 1800s and early 1900s in our state and throughout the nation, Carl's right, we couldn't build it today, but I'm thankful, and we're thankful that this was built, and certainly thankful that the Irvine Lake facility was built. Well, I'd like to offer my welcome to you too to the Peters Canyon Regional Park. It's one of the wonderful parks in our county system of recreational facilities. I've seen people biking by here and walking through as we're going through this, and it is a heavily used facility, and very much appreciated by the folks in this part of the county anyway. Peters Canyon Regional Park was granted to the people of Orange County as the Irvine Ranch transitioned from farming and ranching to the residential development that we see near us today. The Irvine Ranch once occupied the geographic heart of Orange County. It's here that James Irvine II had the foresight to irrigate the San Joaquin Ranch and eventually began the planning of the surface water conservation dams like Peters Canyon. In the early days, pioneers were able to get their water from the Santa Ana River. But after a few years of debilitating droughts, there was a desperate need for something more sustainable. James Irvine II came along with several local business partners with a need to keep his ranch efficient and his Valencia oranges growing. He soon developed the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System. Ultimately, the expansion of the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System was necessary to sustain the growing agricultural enterprise of the citrus industry, an essential economic force in Orange County. The irrigation built Orange County. In 1961, knowing that cities, not citrus, would soon be growing on the land, there was a different kind of water demand that everyone knew was coming. Demands not for crops, but for dishwashers, backyard sprinklers, and water that tastes good. The foundation laid out by the Irvine Ranch Irrigation System was eventually to benefit the people and the growth of Orange County culturally. Because of these irrigation efforts in the past, the county continues to prosper and grow. The use of the land and its inhabitants has been a priority as Orange County and California moves towards the future. On behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, I'm grateful for the efforts of the American Society of Civil Engineers Orange County Branch, and specifically those in the Historic and Heritage Committee, for the recognition of this part of Orange County's history. Thank you all for being here. And Bill, do I turn it back to you now?
Thank you very much, Supervisor Campbell. All right, we're almost done. The final thing I need to do here is to formally dedicate the plaque. And what I usually do is read what's on the plaque quickly. It's not too long, bear with me. It says Irvine Ranch Irrigation System, construction started in 1930, completed in 1959. Was conceived in the 1920s by James Irvine II. A series of reservoirs, canals, and pipelines conserves San Diego Creek. Winter runoff for the dry season goes into this facility. Water is shared by agreement between the Serrano Water District and the Irvine Company. The Irvine share is diverted by pipeline and canals from the San Diego Dam across the Loma Ridge to the Peters Canyon Dam, and then to lower reservoirs for irrigation of the Irvine Valley orchards. And the system is a tribute to the civil engineering profession and ingenuity of C. Roy Browning, professional engineer who worked for the Irvine for James Irvine II. So that's what it says. I hereby dedicate this plaque to the American Society of Civil Engineers and to place it in the care of the Orange County Parks Department, who will see that it gets nurturing as needed. These things last a long time. So we'll come and check on them every year or two just to make sure it hasn't run away, but otherwise it is going to be here for the public display from here on, and we really appreciate the county's helping us make this possible. Again, we've already thanked the Ranger Raul Herrera and his staff, Gazelle, and Bick of the Orange County History staff. They've been directly involved in making this happen. So, did you have a question? Oh yes, we're going to take photographs as soon as, and be aware that you're all on tape. We all know who was here. We will be publishing our video of this event on the ASCE website at some point in the future. Can't promise how quick that'll happen, but we'll get to it. I don't mean to drag this out. I think I've covered everything we need to cover. So again, thank you all for being here, and all the speakers and ASCE officers that are here. I would like you to kind of stay forward here so we can take a few photographs. And for the rest of you, we have refreshments also provided by Orange County Parks, and we hope you'll hang around and talk to a few people while you're here. On the table where if you signed in when you arrived, we appreciate that. If you haven't signed in, it's just for the record. We would appreciate everybody signing the roster. There's a book on the table that's full of photographs of all the previous plaque dedications that we've done, and you're welcome to thumb through that as well. Again, thank you very much for coming, and we'll do it again sometime. Thank you.